Hi everybody, thanks for watching. Today I want to tell you about a book that I think that every perfume lover, perfume collector, even if you're into aromatherapy, I think everyone should have this book on their bookshelf, and that is Nosedive by Harold McGee, and the subtitle says a field guide to the world's smells. So this really is a guide to all the smells in the world. It's not just about perfume, it's not just about good smells, but bad smells as well. And I decided to get this book. It was recommended to me a few years ago, and I walked into the library one day and it was like right in front on the bookshelf. So I borrowed it, and the library here, you can check books out for 3 weeks at a time, at which point they automatically renew up to a maximum of 4 times. So you can just borrow a book for 12 weeks without even having to return it or even go back to the library, as long as nobody else has put it on hold and is looking for it. So I ended up having the book for 12 weeks, and I did read it cover to cover, and then I kept it around for reference. And then I would just keep returning it and borrowing it, returning and borrowing it. And then this past time I wanted to look something up, and I decided to just buy myself a copy. So I will put the link to where you can purchase it on Amazon below. But I really think that this is a great reference book to have on hand. This book is part anthropology, part history, and then also very, very scientific. So it's a nice blend of those 3 subject areas, and it really does just talk about smells and then how we perceive them, how we have perceived smells historically, and how they perceive them around the world, how, there's differences in the associations that different cultures have in there with smells. And then also it talks about the compounds that make up some of the smells that we have around us. And it is divided up, like in for the reference section, it is divided up into different categories. For example, there's a whole section on fruits, and that's divided up into stone fruits and berries and things like that. There's of course a whole chapter on fragrances and like the different molecules that go into fragrances, but then also it talks about some famous fragrances as reference points, which is kind of nice. Talks about roots, seeds, spices, and what different spices have in common. So that's kind of cool. I think, the way that I like to refer to this book now is when you think about something like white florals, like orange blossom and jasmine and tuberose, and there are elements that those 3 have in common, but then there's also things that make them different. So if you want to know what they have in common and why we perceive them as either being very good or very bad, then this is a good book to kind of read and look at. One of the things that I found really interesting in this book is that tuberose has a kind of menthol facet in its scent, and when I read that, it made sense to me because Carnal Flower is one of my favorite perfumes, and that's menthol and tuberose. And then Tuberose Criminal is one of my favorite perfumes, and that is what is it? Is it camphor and tuberose together, or I think that's like wintergreen actually. So I feel like people who are perfumers or maybe even good cooks are innately aware of those qualities of different scents and can kind of attach elements to them to enhance them or to actually calm them down. But if you want something that you can read that has all that documented, then this is a great book to have on hand. The other thing I found is that sometimes once we're aware of something, we become more sensitive to it. And then when we are more sensitive to it, we can perceive it with like a more acute sense, and that can be kind of a good thing. If you're aware of the menthol aspects of tuberose, then you can kind of analyze it when you're smelling it, or when you smell something blind and you can perceive that, then maybe you can identify tuberose a little bit better or more easily. So that's kind of cool as well. I wouldn't say that I have everything in this book memorized, which is why I like to have it on hand to keep referring to. But I have found it to be very valuable in having nearby, you know, and like I said, like there are actual, I'll show you, I just saw it in here. There are actual compounds that are drawn out in here, right? So if you're trying to understand some of the more sciencey things that are in different things that we smell, that's all here too. And I love learning about that, even though, you know, I'm not really a science person, but everything is written in a way that's also really, really easy to understand. Like this is for normal people. It's not written with a lot of jargon. It's not written with like a particular kind of reader in mind. It's really meant for everybody, and that's, I think, another reason that I like it so much, is because it explains everything in great detail. And so you don't have to be very sciencey, you don't have to be, you know, the most educated perfume nerd. Like you can just be a regular person and you will find some value in this book. If nothing else, then maybe like the history, or you know, just even the different families of smells that go together are really, really interesting. The other thing that I really like about it is like when it talks about indoles and like why we find indoles to be off-putting, or why we actually want to smell them. That part is really interesting also. So just like lots of really good information. I think I also read in here that like lychee and rose have qualities that are qualities in common, which makes sense because lychee and rose is really popular in desserts, especially if you go to any of the Asian regions, like if you go to India or you go to China, those places, you know, they do put lychee and rose together a lot, and it's quite delicious. But then when you think of a perfume like Delina, which has lychee and rose, and people love it so much, and so many other perfumes as well that have those two together, you know, it kind of makes sense why they do go together so nicely and why people love that so much. So that is kind of cool. Again, highly recommend it. It's not very hard to find. It has been around forever, but I really think that this is a must-have for anyone that is into smells of any kind. And sometimes it helps to read it because then you can explain things to people a little bit better, and that's nice also. Let me know what you think. If you have this book, or if you have any other perfume books that you recommend. I do have a few that are on my bookshelf. I have Perfumes, The Guide by Luca Turin. I think I have one version of that and not the other. I keep meaning to get the other, and I will at some point. But let me know of any other books that you think I should check out, and I will try my best to find them. The other thing I want to bring up is that if your local library doesn't have this book, then you should look into whether you can recommend it, because I know that my library lets people recommend books and then they choose whether they're going to buy it or not. So I go onto their website and we're allowed to recommend 5 books a month. That doesn't mean that your book will always get bought and added to the collection, but you can try. They've actually acquired quite a few of the books that I've recommended. Obviously, I just recommend perfume books because I figure that if I'm interested in them, other people might be as well. And it's just, I mean, like, the library is just such a great resource. Spoken like a true socialist, right? But look into that. If they don't have this, then maybe recommend that they get it, and then you can just check it out for free. Yeah, that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching. I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.